Imagine that companies were paying to offset their pollution. That's what carbon credits are, essentially. Big companies like Coca-Cola will pay $1 for every dollar of pollution they create, however that's figured out. Now, arguably, can you figure that out one for one? It's been controversial. But nevertheless, there are groups all around the world that invest in green energy, clean energy, and preservation of land. Different companies believe in doing it different ways. However, what if I were to tell you that one of the largest companies that did this, one of the largest nonprofit groups, and actually a network of groups, took the money that they were paid in order to buy land to preserve the rainforest, and instead they used that money to lease land and log the rainforest. Then they took the money and they reinvested it to buy equipment to log and destroy even more of the rainforest in the Amazon. An area over 5 times the size of New York City limits in just the last year. Well, that's what's occurred. I'm Alexander Williamson, and you're watching Fishtory. I don't always bring you guys good news. I try to bring you optimistic news and also truthful news. And there is a huge investigation that was just completed by Mung Bay and a group of journalists, all working together for the last year, investigating what has occurred starting under the Bolsonaro government in Brazil. Now, we knew that under that government there would be consequences. That's when we saw the biggest burnings, intentional burnings of the rainforest by farmers for clearing of cattle grazing. And we knew that his priority was business at whatever cost and not the environment. Well, it appears that 74 people were arrested just the other morning, and another 8 elected officials also were involved in this plot. And over $300 million has been basically squandered and used not only to make the problem worse, but then outright stolen after the fact. And 2 jets, dozens of luxury cars, and many more assets were seized just the other day. So I'm going to read you guys the detail from the report if you guys are interested in it. I hate bringing, such unfortunate news and bringing the whole nonprofit and credit system into question, but it doesn't matter if you're right or left or whatever. We need to be about the truth here, and we need to be about the facts. And the facts point to this being a giant scam in this case. Now, there are many other carbon credit networks that are still functioning just fine, and it should not be a problem, doesn't impact them at all. And there's plenty of, environmental groups doing really good things with money that's being paid to offset the pollution of industry. So I don't want to shade any of those groups, but it is worth saying we need that regulation and oversight. So here are the details that I was able to uncover over the last few days. On June 5th, 2024, the Brazilian Federal Police launched a raid targeting the proponents of some of the largest carbon credit projects in the Brazilian Amazon. This greenwashing operation, as it is often called in the underworld, focuses on the group of Ricardo Stope, cited in late May by the Mung Bay investigation group for its links with an alleged illegal timber scam. It is the country's largest investigation ever done into this matter. Authorities found that the group had installed projects in land-grabbed areas making 180 million reais, which is the Brazilian currency and equal to around $34 million, for selling these so-called rotten carbon credits in this first accusation. Stope owns 5 REDD plus projects in the Brazilian Amazon, which is the name of the carbon credit washing and management agencies. They cover over 400,000 hectares, or nearly 1 million acres. That's more than 5 times the size of New York City. And REDD stands for Reducing Emissions from Deforestation and Forest Degradation. And it takes carbon credits that are generated by business and essentially allows businesses to use their money to go towards protecting areas that otherwise would be deforested and are permitted for deforestation in many cases. The federal police targeted the same 3 projects that Mung Bay investigated, and those were under the names Fortaleza Ituki, Unitor, and Evergreen. Located in the municipalities of Librea and Apui in south of Amazonas state region. Among the buyers of these credits are companies you've undoubtedly heard of, such as Brazilian Airlines, GOL Airlines, the food delivery app iFood, Itaú, and one of the country's leading banks. Not only this, international companies including Toshiba, Spotify, Boeing, and Lockheed Martin were also a part of this initial investigation. The federal police echoed that there are no findings that would incriminate any of these companies. However, those receiving funds are the ones that are in question in this investigation. So Mung Bay's findings are that the group was using these areas not only to generate carbon credits that they could issue with fake documents, but they were also used to launder timber taken illegally from protected areas. So they illegally deforested these areas that were once under the protection of the Brazilian government and under the program of these carbon credits, and basically set aside. This land was then used as supposedly as a preserve, and then in other places where it was zoned to be sustainably harvested, they used that land and left it standing for a time while they cut down other areas that were supposedly being protected, until ultimately also cutting down these areas. Now, on June 7th, 2024, the Brazilian Federal Police arrested people and seized assets linked to some of the country's largest carbon credit projects. Not just one, not just 3, but dozens. According to the investigators, the group was running a land grabbing and timber laundering syndicate in the Amazon for more than a decade, profiting more than $100 million. The projects were exposed at the end of May in a 1-year investigation by the Mung Bay Investigation Syndicate, and it showed links between the REDD group of carbon credit washing companies and known illegal timber loggers and organizations. Authorities and experts hope the findings will raise the bar for these type of projects in the country in the future and will persuade lawmakers to create stricter rules for the Brazilian carbon market. Many countries have halted buying carbon emission credits from Brazil altogether as of June 11th. However, back to the raid that targeted these groups and the greenwashing operation, and noted that trees that were already tagged for being logged in the Brazilian state of Rondônia, the trees were waiting for transport, and all the timber that was to be transported was said to be of sustainable forest origin. However, these are transferred into then carbon credits from timber credits, and once environmental authorities approve the forest management plan of a region, its owner can issue a certain amount of credits from that land. These credits were being issued multiple times from the same piece of land, and the trees were also being extracted at the end of each process. In Stope's case, however, an analysis found that the forest management plans inside his REDD Plus projects didn't extract all the wood they could. According to the Center for Climate Crime Analysis, the CCCA, a nonprofit based out of the Netherlands that prosecutes and investigates climate crimes as well as pollution and corruption investigations, greenhouse gas, and use of illegal means to launder money. They use satellite images in order to compare the volume of timber taken from Stope's registered areas, and found that the declared truckloads being registered on the carbon market did not match after a tip-off. The CCCA found mismatch equivalents of more than 4,200 truckloads of wood taken from one property, which was reviewed by the panel to only hold enough for 300 truckloads. Now, using Stope's projects and credits, everything involved here was probably illegally laundered and taken from other areas to make up those other 3,800 truckloads. That's not all. There were even more truckloads involved in the other two syndicates involved in this. Now, Stope's own group is under a shadow corporation of Charles Pose Bon Group, considered one of the Amazon's largest deforesters and a timber company. Charles Pose de Bon was actually sentenced earlier to 70 years in prison for corruption and for illegal logging. Jose Luis Capelloso and Eliseo Aprisindio were behind this illegal extraction of more than 1 million cubic meters of wood, which is equivalent to 5,000 truckloads a year for the last several years out of this region. They were certainly using paper to launder wood, said federal authorities. The greenwashing operation investigator told Mung Bay by phone that near their logging companies there is a group of indigenous people known as the Aquachar, and that this Aquachar land is protected and also home to largely uncontacted groups. This is where they believe a lot of the truckloads of wood were coming from. Now, these people living on this land have very little contact with the outside world and may even have may not have an immunity to outside pathogens and diseases. And so when coming into contact with outsiders like these loggers, they can oftentimes get sick. But beyond that, bringing in the black market goods and substances such as coca products as well as firearms has caused all sorts of problems in these indigenous regions, as well as the bringing in of illegal liquor. And all of this is another side business worth an estimated $14 million in the territory alone. The projects were exposed at the end of May when the Mung Bay investigation group concluded its investigation, and experts hope that the findings will persuade even more people to come forward with whistleblowing and knowledge of projects like this. It is undoubtedly not only going on in Brazil, but likely taking place in developing nations around the world, and all of these carbon credit groups should be investigated and regulated to a much larger degree. The federal police at the end of the process, as of yesterday, the 11th of June, served 76 arrest warrants, did another 129 search and seizure warrants for documents, funds, as well as any other ill-gotten gains. And they searched the states of Rondônia, Amazonas, Mato Grosso, Paraná, Sierra, Sao Paulo, and seized 2 airplanes, including a jet, luxury cars, and several pieces of jewelry worth over $100,000. Moco and Capaleso were arrested, as well as Stope's son, Ricardo Villares Los Stope, and Capelaso's daughter, the forest engineer named Paulina, who signed the likely fraudulent forest management plans under the government's watch. After spending 2 days on the run, Ricardo Stope turned himself in as of June 11th, and he has bailed out and has no comment, according to his lawyer. This is an egregious case of corruption and undoubtedly a sad, sad day for environmental groups around the world, not to mention the damage that's already been done. The Stope group grabbed more than 500,000 hectares or 1.2 million acres of public lands in the south of the Amazonas state, 3 times the size of the Sao Paulo municipality altogether. And this was the second land grab crime that took place several years later, it appears. The forest was cleared for open space pastures for cattle to graze, and the deforestation rapidly appeared on satellite imagery over the last 5 years and under the Bolsonaro government. It appears that the Bolsonaro government was aware of this at several points, including times in which Mungbe and the Dutch investigation firm up to 5 years ago made note of the satellite images and the indiscriminate logging of these massive regions. However, they were met with a quote in an email that says, "In this case, the forest remains intact. On the ground, there are no signs that systems have been failed or that checks have been missed. We have no problems with the neighbors here because they're not going to seize private land, only the demarcated public lands, and there are no complaints from people on the ground. How do you find out that they are committing these crimes? Is it from within our country or just speculation?" It is speculation, I think. That's from a unknown government official responding to inquiries. And at the end of this whole thing, which I know is a little confusing because there were two sets of documents that were just read off from two different big land grabs by the same company who basically hired several other people under them and several shell corporations. But at the end of the day, 820 million reais, or 156 million US dollars, were seized by police, and 1.6 billion dollars, or rather 304 million, were also seized in assets and land, not including timberland. It is believed that the actual scam with laundering the timber also netted 606 million reais, or 115 million US dollars, for more than $500 million in combined losses altogether in fraudulent causes, laundered credits, and black market economics on the ground. So, absolutely incredible, the scope of this. And this is just a few groups in one country. Who knows what's going on in Peru or, anywhere else, Colombia, Borneo, Malaysia, Indonesia. We really need to keep an eye on these things, and I am so grateful that there are groups that do, but they are woefully underemployed, understaffed, and underfunded. So supporting any of these causes is really important in my mind. And even if you don't believe in the whole system of the carbon credits and things, a lot of the land preservation groups and land trusts that get put together are linked to this. And so a regulation authority to oversee all of that is something that is desperately needed, as well as having some teeth so that politicians don't just, get out on bail the next day or get their cases forgiven and things like that, as we've seen under the Bolsonaro government. That's exactly what happened. And so people right now, the government has shifted again, and hopefully these people will be held somewhat more accountable, like that man who got the 70 years who was in charge of one of the shell companies. But it's highly unlikely that even he will stay more than 5 years in prison if anything from the past serves as a model for the future. All right, you guys, thanks for listening. This is a really important topic in my mind, and something that obviously affects all the rivers going through the area and all the life of the region, not to mention our planet as a whole. I think that all of us just need to stay aware and also, put our money where it counts. When we find out something like this isn't working, let's investigate. Let's find out what is. And I'll do my best here on Fishtory to keep you guys informed of, where that may be and what my thoughts are on the matter. I hope you guys all have a good day, and